Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Eternal Brews video series here on EternalTitans.com. This is going to be an update on one of the longest standing Eternal Brews deck techs that I've been revisiting occasionally, the Strangers. So time for some Stranger Danger, let's check it out. Okay, so this is the current deck list. Not a whole lot has changed, but a bunch of people have asked me for an update lately, so I figured I'll give them one, even though a lot has remained the same. And yeah, I hope you guys appreciate it, even though there's not that massive of an overhaul. Alright, so a couple things. We have 38 units, all strangers. We have 12 1-drops, Ruthless Stranger, Heavy Stranger, Hearty Stranger, and Horus Traver. These two help us make our strangers better, and these help us make sure we can actually support all the greedy colors we are playing, because we are effectively a 5-faction deck that heavily requires Felscar colors on the first 2 turns. So Horus Traver makes sure we can also play our Time and Justice cards later, or even that we can play our 2-drops that require a lot of colors. Then we have Grim Stranger and Hair Trigger Stranger. Initially, for quite some time, these were, I think, Combrei Strangers, or like some version of a color fixing Stranger, depending on what fit best, to make sure the Forsworn Stranger is strong on turn 3, and also that the influence is working well. But with the introduction of Horus Traver and Common Cause, the deck really doesn't need that anymore, so getting some extra utility on offense is pretty nice. Quick Draw is quite good. It's not quite flying, but it has a similar effect in terms of evasion as flying a lot of the time, because strangers are pretty big usually. So Quick Draw is kind of like a pseudo evasion in the sense that it discourages the opponent from blocking. They can still block, jump block for example, or they can gang block to take down someone, but it makes combat a lot harder for the opponent until we get the flying going, and then the opponent, unless they have a Titan, will not have any good blocks. Even if they have a couple of flyers, they usually don't have very good blocks. And Grim Stranger is just basically an additional stranger that makes our strangers deal more damage. It's sort of a weaker version of Determined Stranger, since it doesn't give actual attack for Quick Draw, for example, and it doesn't give any health, but it deals direct damage. So even if your opponent has blockers, they might sometimes just die to the attack even before the units deal damage to them just from the Grim Stranger triggers. Also, the deck is an aggro deck, so you want to curve out. That's why 12 1-drops and 8 2-drops are a really nice curve. Then we have 8 3-drops to follow it up with. Determined Stranger to resize our board and make sure we don't fall behind in unit sizing on the board, and a Forsworn Stranger, which is just usually a massive monster, and since it's a stranger, it's gonna get even bigger. Usually strangers are a bit undersized due to all the synergies among them, making them better already. So if they would have normal unit sizing together with the bony they get, they would be like way better than any other unit in the game. This way they are a bit more balanced, but still usually better than most units in the game. And having a Forsworn Stranger that can even be like a 5/5 on turn 3, get all these boni makes it really rough, and it's also immune to Annihilate, which is nice. So it can basically mostly be taken down by like Slay, Vanquish and Permafrost, and some clunky removal that shouldn't be played really. Then we have 1 4-drop, Soaring Stranger. This is basically where the opponent really gets taken out of the game if they're playing units and they don't have a lot of interaction, just killing every stranger. You just drop a Soaring Stranger and then you just usually win in like 1 or 2 attacks, because flying is so powerful in constructed against a lot of decks. And then we have 1 5-drop, Battle Tested Stranger. This card is just sort of like Xenan Obelisk at 8 power on legs. This card is amazing. It's really powerful, and part of why strangers have to be downsized a bit, at least at the like lower end of reasonable sizing for their cost, because otherwise that would just all snowball way too hard. But yeah, this card is amazing, and the Curve Topper. And then we have like 2 sort of grindy cards. They also cost 5. First of all, he's as big as the other strangers you have. I think he's the way he's worded, he should be a 2/2 by himself, but I think he's a 1/1 by himself, so that's a bit weird. And yeah, at the start of your turn, create and play a random stranger. So this is a way to get some of the random utility strangers that are situationally nice, but not good enough to put into the deck, either because they're too expensive or the ability they provide is too narrow. And also it's multi-faction, so it's also hard to kill, especially when it doesn't have Vanquish size and the opponent already used their torches. So yeah, this is a card that can just easily take over a game that has stalled out and can be situationally very powerful. But it's a 5-drop, we already have 4 5-drops, so I don't want too many of these. And then we have 8 spells, not a whole lot, but the deck really doesn't need a whole lot. It just needs some way to stop sweepers and interaction with the board, and it needs a way to deal with a few annoying big units, mostly Sandstorm Titan to ground the strangers when you have Soaring Stranger. That's probably the most annoying, and I don't know, some stuff like Vara or some other big lifesteal unit like a Xenan. And most of the things you will absolutely have to answer will be answered by Vanquish, which is why I went with Vanquish. Permafrost doesn't answer Titan and doesn't answer Vara sufficiently, because Stand Together can be very important against Vara decks, because they often run Harsh Rule. And also Vanquish costing 2 fits well into the deck because it only has 8 2-drops, and we already have 8 3-drops as well and Stand Together, so that's a lot of 3-cost cards, so you really don't want something like Slay. Also not very efficient for an aggressive deck, and as I said, Permafrost doesn't do it. Torch only kills stuff that we don't really care about usually, so Vanquish is the choice here, also because Annihilate is less flexible than Vanquish, because sometimes a fatty can stall you out, and those fatties can also be multi-faction, like Xenan or, I don't know, Out of the Vault and that sort of stuff, a big Alassi, there's a bunch of things, and Vanquish is just a bit better at dealing with more problematic things than Annihilate, I would say. I mean, you could go something like 3 Vanquish, 1 Annihilate if you want to, that seems fine, because the 2 most important things to answer will probably be Titan and Vara, and Annihilate does that, so I can see trying some split there, but for now just went with straight Vanquish. To be fair, Annihilate is a bit easier to cast in the deck because the deck has more shadow sources than Justice, so that is also an upside of Annihilate, so I would probably recommend going to like 3 and 1 maybe for now. And then we have 4 Stand Together. I went back and forth between 3 and 4 of these, not 100% sure on the 4th. But the thing is really, if you go like curve out 1, 2, 3 or something and then Stand Together your board, that is really powerful against a lot of interactive decks, especially if the interaction was slower and they are relying on a sweeper. And then Stand Together can really like nail the game. And then we have 29 power. 29 power because we have 6 5-drops, so 29 power is like the bare minimum. If we absolutely would need to drop this on turn 5, I would probably even run 30, but I think it is fine to run 29, because you don't... It's like this card is not getting a whole lot worse if you don't drop it on curve on turn 5. If you just play something else on turn 5 and draw your 5th power on like turn 6 and drop it, it's still very good. Unlike, for example, in Argent Pot decks where I usually ran 30, because of Tavrot, because Tavrot gets so much worse turn after turn. Like, it's the best on turn 5 because of how big it is and how hard it is to answer. Every turn later you drop it, you give your opponent more draws to find the specific answer to stop it from ever attacking for the first time, and give the opponent more chance to line up their board in a way that allows them to gank block Tavrot, so it only 1-for-1s itself, and then you have to hope to at least hit 1 card with it, and if you don't, you really lost a lot of the power of your deck. Well, in this deck it's not that big of a deal, I think. And yeah, the power base, we have 9 sigils, that's like the bare minimum I want. Might even be slightly too low, but I think it should be fine. We only have 6 seats, And we have a lot of other ready sources, so we still have like 17 ready sources plus the 6 banners that are going to be ready a lot of the time too. So the 9 sigils have been fine. We have like 3, 3, and 3 of our like primary influence. Then we have 4 Seed of Fury for our primary 1-drops, and a Seed of Cunning and a Seed of Chaos for our 2-drops, together with the sigils and the seed. If you have a 1-drop, Xenan banner can also help play both of these 2-drops. And then Combrei banner, because all our time and justice cards are usually plays on turn 3 onward. Also having like Felon Scar colors on the first 2 turns can be really nice, because if you then drop a Combrei banner as your 3rd power, you have all 5 influence and you can drop a 5/5 Forsworn Stranger on turn 3, which is super powerful. And then yeah, we have 4 common cores for Diplomatic Seal. Common cores, great addition for the deck. Gives you more 5 faction, 5 influence power sources for the deck. Now the deck has like 12 of these, Horus, Traver, and these 8, which is amazing. Plus being heavily Felon Scar with a bit of support here from these is amazing. And yeah, the deck is still a very solid deck. It can still like win more than it loses in ranked, even in like the top 100. So it's definitely something that you can easily play without just losing so much that even though you think strangers and this kind of deck is fun, becomes unfun, because losing too much with any deck, no matter how cool and fun it is, becomes unfun pretty quick if you ask me. But if you're still like winning half or more than half of your games with something that you think is cool and fun, that's pretty awesome, and that makes it a lot yeah, more long-lived, because you can play it much longer without kind of getting frustrated over just being outmatched, outclassed all the time, left and right. Alright, as usual, gonna hop into some games, show it to you in action. Let's see how strangers match up these days. And one quick reminder, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel down here. Turn on notification icon to not miss out on future deck techs and other content. And of course, if you want to further support us, please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube. And I'm gonna be right back with game number 1. See you in a moment.